Howdy, guys, and welcome to Cliff Notes, and welcome to a recap of the Challenge Ride or Dies episode number 12. God, it seems like so much has taken place so far. Episode number 12. Before we talk about what happened this particular episode, a real quick refresher about what happened last week. We lost Nuris after she was defeated by Amber in elimination. It was a girls' elimination week. Remember, they're no longer ride or dies competing together. All the ride or dies have been split up. They're two teams, started out two teams of eight. Faisal was the captain of one team. Mariah was the captain of the other team. Mariah's team not doing so well. They lost Nuris last week, which means they are now down one man and one woman. Faisal's got 8 players still left. Mariah's only got 6. Are the underdogs going to make a comeback this week? I hope so, because if not, if you get to an 8-5 level, something's got to change. Every time they lose another player, it's just going to become a little bit more of a steamroll. So if they're going to make it happen, it probably needs to happen this week. Now, I mentioned last week we lost Nuris. It was a woman's elimination, which means most likely this week is going to be a men's elimination. Now, TJ's twisted things up before, but we got to think it's probably going to be a men's elimination, which puts potentially on Faisal's team, puts Chauncey in a bad spot simply because he's the only rookie male on that particular team. But having said that, and it sure seems like these vets have been sticking together quite a bit, right? But I'm not sure if I'm Devin, if I'm Jordan, that I can afford at this point in time to go easy, to make an easy choice, send someone out that's designed just not to offend people. If they win this thing on that side, I think they got to take a big shot. I truly do. So Chauncey in trouble, maybe, but there's a lot of people over on Faisal's side who 4 guys, and all 4 of them could be at risk this week as a result. Now, if Faisal's team won again, who could be in trouble? Well, maybe they put Horatio up against either Devin or Jordan. Either way, there's no more hiding for the vets. We're through that part. I think from this point on, vets are going to start taking more and more shots at each other, and that's what's going to make it just that much more exciting. So there's the background of what's going on. Men's elimination this week. Let's figure out what is going to happen. We do see a quick little discussion between Bananas and Nany. Remember, they came in as a ride or die with each other, and they're talking. They're still watching out for each other. Some of these teams, such as Mariah and Fessy, a few others are starting to get a little distant from each other to some degree. That's not the case with Johnny and Nany. Johnny is still saying, I'm here to help you out. You're here to help me out. We'll watch out for each other, regardless of which of our sides win. So we do see them still trying to protect each other. I think you got to do it at this point in the game, right? Did think it's interesting. Nany is so well protected right now. She's got Bananas watching out for her. She's got obviously Casey, her girlfriend, watching out for her as well. She's just got a lot of folks over on Facey's side of the team that's watching out for Nany. I think Nany's in a very good situation right now. We'll see how it plays out over the next few weeks. All right, we've also got some other conversations taking place. We have one conversation with Nelson talking to someone outside the house. Yeah, and it's his buddy Corey. Corey is not on this season, but Corey's telling Nelson, saying, congrats for being, getting as far as you've gotten so far and all that. He said, but look, you got to take a shot at Bananas and Faisal. You can't let them stick around. The longer they stick around, the more chances they're going to turn around and do a dirty on you, Nelson, and get you out on a blind side. You got to get them out of the house. Nelson then comes back and says, well, actually, Faisal and I are kind of fixing things up. We've kind of mended that relationship a little bit. We're watching out for each other. Corey taking it back a little bit, but also saying, look, you do what you got to do in this game. Just always stay focused on the big prize. Now we'll see how this whole Faisal and Nelson relationship works out. Now, something outside the game, but I'm still so glad that the challenge took a little time to show it. They're talking about Jordan, and Jordan's talking specifically about some of the humanitarian aid he's been doing on the ground in Ukraine, bringing in all kinds of supplies to help the people that are there, helping evacuees get out of the country. I didn't know about that about Jordan. It just elevates my my respect for that guy that much more. I really like Jordan. I've been enjoying watching the way he plays the game. Outside the game, seems like an amazing guy as well. So yeah, I'm glad the challenge showed that a little bit. Doing some good for the world. We do have Faisal talking to Mariah. Faisal, who's always trying to work the angle, right? Faisal's talking to Mariah saying, look, it is a men's elimination. I could be in trouble if my side loses. If you've got any way to help keep that from happening, in other words, if you could throw the competition, I certainly would be very appreciative, given that you and I were ride or die as we came into this game together and all that. So he's asking Mariah for help if she has the opportunity to do so. But Mariah, she's figuring Faisal out a little bit. She's telling Faisal, saying, look, I get it. I know what you're asking. I know what you're suggesting, but she's saying last week was a women's elimination, and you sure as heck didn't help me any during my deal. And he says, oh, it worked out fine. No, you drew the safety sword, so you're safe. Doesn't matter. Well, it kind of does still matter that he really did not have her back when the shoe was on the other foot. So Mariah's not committing to anything. She's not saying, yeah, I'm going to save you, Faisal. She's figuring out. In fact, I think she even mentions at one point that she's realizing Faisal will just do whatever benefits Faisal, not so much herself. And so she hears what he says, but she kind of claps back on that and not making any promises to Faisal whatsoever. All right, with that in mind, we're getting ready to head to the weekly challenge. Devin spends one last little moment right before the challenge to fire up his team. I think Devin's played this game enough. He understands how absolutely critical this particular competition is. They can't go down 8-5 if they have a chance of coming back. So Devin's trying to get his team fired up as much as he could. I call them the underdogs. Well, they're calling themselves another kind of dog, a bleeping dogs that they recognize that they are the underdogs at this point in time. So he's got them fired up. And with that, we get to see what the challenge is going to be this week. It's going to be a fun one because it involves helicopters, cables, and a big old body of water. And can I say, a cold, cold, cold body of water. I wasn't down there personally, but Argentina, it just looks cold. So yeah, this is going to be an exciting one. TJ tells us the name of the challenge is Chopper Drop. It's pretty self-descriptive, right? There is a little bit more to it than that, though. The idea behind this game is the helicopter is going to come by. It has 6 handles, call them trapezes. Trapezes? 6 trapeze that you have to, each person on a team has to hold on to it. As the helicopter lifts you off of one ramp, it's going to fly over some squares that have been placed in the water. And each member of the team has to drop, and you have to time your drop so that you land within the border of a particular square. The bigger the square, the fewer the points. The smaller the square, the more points that you get. But you can't have more than 2 people from a team land in any one target. So basically with 6 players, you need 2 people in the big target, 2 in the medium, and 2 in the small target. This is the way it's going to work out. Now, once everyone has landed in their targets, at that point, they then have to swim from their target to a final ramp, a final platform. Once everyone has reached a platform, the time ends. The people landing in the largest ramp, the largest square, also have the farthest to swim. So a little bit of a strategic decision there. Do you put your weaker players in the biggest squares that gives the best chance of dropping and getting inside? But it also means they have to swim farther. So that's something that they're going to hash out as they do that. So everyone has to swim to the platform. Once they do that, TJ blows a horn and your round is over. It's going to be played in 2 heats. If whichever team gets the most points obviously wins. But if they both get the same number of points, it's going to be whoever makes all 6 players, whichever team gets all 6 players back to the ramp fastest, then wins if they're tied from a point standpoint. So it's a speed and a precision standpoint dropping down into these squares. Now, as I said, there are 2 heats for the game. We've got Faisal's team goes first. Now, they've got 8 players, and they've only got 6 people that are able to hang on to the chopper. So the other 2 are going to be resting on kind of temporary platforms or other floating platforms. And as soon as everyone starts swimming to the final platform, then these 2 can jump in the water as well. So they still have to do the swimming. They just don't have to drop from the ladder itself. And the two that are swimming is Olivia and for life of me, I can't remember who else it was. We'll figure out as we go through the point scores. So Faisal's team's going to go first. Let's talk about what happens on that. It must have been Anissa on the other ramp, because on Faisal's team, we've got Casey and Tori, Bananas and Faisal and Nelson and Chauncey are the 6 holding on to the chopper. Casey and Tori both drop off at the very first square, the biggest square, to get the minimum number of points. Tori points out that they really felt like the two of them maybe had the least chance of holding on to the trapeze to the very end. I find that hard to believe, knowing what a great... No, Tori maybe. Casey is a heck of an athlete, but whatever. The two women drop in the first square. They get 50 points each. Bananas and Faisal drop into the next target for 70 points each. And then Nelson and Chauncey drop into the final target, the smallest target. They get 100 points each. All 6 land in the target. So maximum number of points. It's now just a matter of the time to get to the platform. I think it does make sense. Nelson and Chauncey landed in the smallest square, not so much because of the precision of the drop, but because I'm not as sure about Chauncey, but I know Nelson doesn't always think that he's the best swimmer in the group. So the smallest square put him closest to the final platform. So I'm sure that came into play with the decisions. But again, at the end of it, maximum points for Faisal's team. It's just a matter of timing. How fast did they finish it up? Now we did have, with regards to the timing, we did have Olivia. Remember, she didn't compete. She started off on a little floating platform of her own. She jumped in. She still had to swim to the end. Well, Olivia, as strong a competitor as she has been on every event so far this season, swimming wasn't her strong point. And maybe it's because this water just looked brutally cold as well. Take your breath away. And she talks about that she just couldn't catch her breath. But Olivia certainly having issues with the swimming. Eventually, Faisal has to go back towards where she is and drags her to the final platform just to finish up for their team. So really, he drags Olivia, but she is not the final one. What it comes down to, the final time is based on, or is dependent on, Tori and KC. Remember the two who dropped in the very first square? It's depend on them because they had the farthest to swim. They're the last to reach that platform. So we'll see how their time stands up to the other team. May not even matter at this point in time. Now Mariah's team, in order to stay alive, they have to land all 6 players in their squares. If they don't, time doesn't matter at all. So on to heat number 2 with Mariah's team. We've got Nani and Mariah drop in the biggest square. Both of them make it. We then have Devin and Amber make it into the second target, second square. They both make it. That's getting a little interesting here, isn't it? And then finally, we've got Jordan and Horatio hold on to the trapeze the longest. They both drop into the smallest square, and they make it as well. So everyone scores maximum points in this particular competition. It's all going to come down to how quickly they can swim to the ramp and stop the clock. Now, they came up with a little bit different strategy than Faisal's team, because Jordan and Devin immediately start swimming back towards the first square in order to help Nani and Mariah make it as quickly as possible to the platform. Is it going to make the difference? Them helping them swim instead of just standing on the ramp and telling them to swim faster. We're going to turn out. It does turn out that there's only a 2-second difference between Faisal's team and Mariah's team, according to TJ. For all we know, it was a 2-minute difference. We wouldn't know any better, right? But supposedly a 2-second difference between the two. That's not much time at all when you're talking about swimming across such a long length as they had to swim. 2-second difference. Who's going to win it? The winner is Mariah's team. Yeah, Mariah. I was happy to see it. I don't ever want to see one team dominate. I'm always going to cheer for the underdogs, and Mariah's team was certainly the underdogs this week. They've won the challenge. They've won the competition. They've knocked a little bit of the arrogance off of Faisal's team, I think, this week, because now Faisal and all of them realize that there's 4 strong guys: Chauncey, Bananas, Faisal, and who am I leaving out? And Nelson. There's 4 strong guys. 2 of them are competing for elimination. 1 of them's going home. So obviously not what they want to see. Devin and the rest of his team, this gives them new life. After this week, next week, it's going to be 7 versus 6. That's reasonable odds. It keeps everything a little bit more interesting going forward. So they did a good job. It was all about the teamwork, swing back to help those couples. So that was good. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier when I first started, now that we know Fessel's team's the one that's going to be fighting for their lives this week, who's in trouble? Is it Chauncey, the rookie? That was my first thought. But as I said a little earlier, I really think that Devin and Jordan and the rest of that team can't afford to sit back and not go for the biggest, strongest threat right on in the beginning. Yeah, it's something to be said for protecting the vets. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours and all that. I don't think they can afford to wait, and I think they realize it. So I'm not sure that Chauncey's in as much trouble as I first thought when I looked at this. I think it's gonna be big targets, and we're gonna see what happens as we go forward with that. So with that being said, it's now time to interrogate the 4 men on Faisal's team, see what kind of arguments they pitch, how they proceed going forward. We do see Faisal and Nelson right before the interrogation talking about how much they don't want to go against each other in elimination. Remember, they had Felson kind of did Nelson a dirty in a previous season. There was some trust, some relationships, some bonds that were broken as a result. They've started mending those together. The last thing they want is not to be able to continue going forward with each other. So if they have to go against each other, send someone home, that is their worst case scenario. They know it. We're seeing it. And the fact that they're talking about it just leads me to think there could be a little foreshadowing going on here in terms of where we may see this competition headed. But they are certainly saying that would be the absolute worst. Chauncey's a little bit worried. Is he the top target? Maybe, maybe not. But Chauncey's worried because he knows that Nelson and Faisal not only don't want to go against each other, but if either one of them draws a safety sword and the other one hasn't been put up for elimination already, they're going to save each other. So say you got Bananas in as the elimination pick. Suddenly Chauncey's going up against Bananas, a 2 in 3 chance that either Nelson or Faisal would draw the safety sword, and they're not saving Chauncey. They're saving each other. So, yeah, Chauncey's starting to get a little bit nervous, realizing that these two guys are watching out for each other. So we do have Bananas and Chauncey basically making a deal. So it looks like they're making a deal to save each other if they have the option, knowing that they're not going to get saved by Nelson or Faisal. All right, with that being said, let's talk about the interrogation itself real quickly. Devin's the first one in. Or I'm going to take that. Devin is kind of leading the interrogation team, I suppose. He's got a whole list of plans, a PowerPoint type notations on why he wants the team to save Chauncey. And of course, Amber loves that. Absolutely, that he's wanting to save her ride or die. But Devin basically is pointing out that, hey, Chauncey isn't our big threat that's going to affect how they play the game. Chauncey's a throwaway. We want to go after a big target. So Devin definitely is not concerned with going after Chauncey. And he makes a mention to the cameras. He says, not only does it not benefit me to send Chauncey out, but by strongly defending Chauncey and wanting to keep him, it builds up a little credit with Amber as well. That hopefully she'll trust me and want to work with me a little bit better. Devin's always thinking of the angles, right? So Devin's talking about that. Nani is saying that she wants Nelson in. Remember, there was some bad blood earlier. Nelson had put Casey up, I think. Nelson had kind of gotten Nani a little mad at her, and Nani carries grudges. So Nani's saying, I want Nelson in. Horatio is saying, look, the Bananas put me in. Nelson put me out. I'm happy with Bananas or Nelson, either one going in. So there certainly is not a unanimous thought in how this is going to go. But where they do all seem to agree is that they need to take a big shot. They can't afford to play it safe at this point in time, which suggests to me that Chauncey probably is off the board at this point in time. I don't know if it was Devin that convinced them or just a general team feeling, but I feel like of the 4 players, Chauncey is probably the least likely to have to go into the elimination. Of course, again, it's sometimes a random draw sends you that direction anyway. But they're all wanting to take a big shot at this point, which makes it exciting for us as a viewer. All right, now, with the interrogations themselves, Chauncey comes in. He doesn't handle it like a rookie. Chauncey's a little tight-lipped. He's not saying a whole lot. He won't say who he'd save if he drew the safety dagger, which is really what what Mariah's team's wanting to hear. And Chauncey says, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'm not going to say. Bananas, on the other hand, is certainly happy to throw someone under the bus. Bananas is saying, look, I'm not the strongest player on this team. If y'all are wanting a big shot, look at Faisal. Faisal beats me on every competition we've done so far. If you're talking about taking a big shot, why in the world did you go after me instead of Faisal? I think Jordan's the one that points out, or Devin says, yeah, but you got 7 rings. I mean, your victories, the number of times you've won, this certainly gives pause for consideration. And Banana says, I get it, but I'm not the target. I'm not the threat maybe that I used to be. Faisal's the threat. So yeah, he's throwing Faisal under the bus from the very beginning. Nelson is also not saying who he would save if Faisal was picked for elimination. Nelson's not saying would he pick would he save Chauncey versus saving Bananas. He's not going to say a word about it. He does say that he really feels that if he has to go into the arena for elimination, he feels like he can beat anyone. So he mentions that. Faisal also not saying who he would save if it came down to a picking between Chauncey and Bananas. So everyone's very tight-lipped at this point in time. Mariah, we've got her talking about the fact that she feels like she's really in a tough spot. She likes Bananas. Faisal is her ride or die. She just doesn't feel like she's got a lot of options. And so she's not sure exactly how she's going to handle this. So that's the end of the interrogation. We do see a little bit of a conversation between Jordan and Devin. These two guys are leading the team. I mean, they're the vets. They know what it's all about. From a strategic standpoint, I think they're the kind of the heart and soul, which suggests to me once Faisal's side gets power, which you know they will at some point, you got to break these two guys up if you're on the other team, because these guys, again, are the heart and soul of Mariah's team. But we got Jordan and Devin strategizing by themselves, talking about breaking up. They're saying, look, we got to break up Nelson and Faisal. Those two are too tight. We know they're going to watch out for each other. We got to send one or the other home. And it seems like Faisal is probably the choice of these two, at least during this particular conversation. And I say that because a little bit later, Jordan seems to backtrack a little bit. He's talking to Faisal and saying, look, I got your back. Your name is not going to come out of my mouth. I play with loyalty, trust, and all that. And Faisal, I'm just telling you, your name is not going to come out of my mouth. But then he also says, but I'm not going to 100% commit to that because, I don't know what's going to happen later. And I can't promise that. I'm just telling you, that's not where I'm looking right now. So he's kind of hedging his bets a little bit, but it certainly seems like he's not nearly as sold on putting Faisal out there as maybe he sounded, or as much as Devin was pushing a little bit earlier. So we'll see how that all works out. And then finally, a huge conversation. At the time, I'm sure the cameraman and all maybe didn't think it was such a big deal. A huge conversation between Tori and Jordan. Remember, past couples, they've got relationships that have existed outside the house and all of that, outside the challenge game. Tori does not want Faisal going home. She likes Faisal. She knows that he's kind of the leader of their side. She wants to keep the strength on her team. So she's talking to Jordan and saying, look, if you were to vote, if you were to, knowing the way I feel, if you were still to vote against what I feel, I just need you to know that it would really affect our relationship. It would make me realize a lot more about how you think about myself and our relationship if you just went against me like that. Yeah, it's a threat. Sure, it's a threat. And Jordan perceives it as such. Jordan is not happy at all that Tori is basically threatening their personal relationship, the way they interact based on game type decision. It doesn't sit well with him at all. And we're going to see how that plays out when we get to the elimination, which is right now. So on to the zone, the elimination competition. Who is Mariah's team picking to go in as an elimination player? Well, again, there wasn't any consensus when he saw the interrogation, so we're not real sure at this point. Jordan gets to be the first person to make the pick. I always wonder, how is it random how they decide? I don't think so. I think the producers know what order they can pick these players in order to get the maximum dramatic views and shots and all that. Well, they got it this week because Jordan is the first. And before Jordan even announces his name, he says, well, here's the deal. Up until about an hour ago, I knew how I was going to vote. It's all about trust and relationships and my pledges and all that I've done for so long. He says, but someone came up to me. They put our personal relationship, and we know he's talking about Tori. They put our personal relationship ahead of the game and threatened that relationship based on games type decisions. And he said, one of the things I've learned is, I don't deal with terrorists. Yes, slamming right into Tori with that comment. Calling her a terrorist, may be a little bit of a stretch, but we get the point, right? He says, he's very much doing 180 degrees what Tori wanted just because he is so offended that she did threaten their relationship to try to get him to vote a certain way. And so he says, as a result, I'm picking Faisal. He said, I'm sorry, Faisal, doesn't have as much to do with you as it has to do with her, but I'm picking Faisal. Tori is not happy. Tori rejects the whole idea that she had anything to do with it. She did. Now, if she had not said anything to Jordan, I don't know what he would have done. I mean, I do, based on what I've seen past seasons and all that, he does tend to be a very loyal person that has a lot of trust and all that, which I like. But this would have been a hard one not to put Faisal up when it came down to it. But once Tori said what she said, he just slammed the door. And so he has picked Faisal. Amber has picked Nelson. She's upset with Nelson. She thought Nelson had her back, and he didn't earlier in the season. So now she's kind of getting her revenge. So she's picked Nelson. Devin has picked Faisal. No huge surprise there. Nany has picked Nelson. She's, again, has her own grudges. So we're very much tied at this point in time. Horatio ends up voting for Faisal. And now, with only 6 votes, we've got 5 votes cast. 3 votes for Faisal, 2 votes for Nelson. It all comes down to Mariah. Faisal's ride or die. Again, do you think these are random, the order? Nah, not at all. Producers saved Mariah for the last. Mariah, thinking back, I guess, to her conversation, thinking back to the fact that that Faisal sure didn't do a lot to help her out in the previous week. She says, look, I can't make a vote that's going to send it to a tie. If it's a tie in the game of challenge, the challenge, lots of times, if they can't decide on who's going out for elimination, then everyone is safe on that team or that group. And it would potentially be someone within Mariah's team that would have to go up instead. That's the way they kind of resolve the tie. So Mariah's saying, I can't make it a tie and take a chance on that. But I'm also not going to say Faisal's name. So I'm voting for Chauncey. Basically, it's a burner vote. She knows the exact outcome, that Chauncey's not going up for elimination, that by doing that, casting that vote, it means that Faisal, her ride or die, is going up. So basically, she's made a decision. She'd rather have Faisal go up than take any kind of chance that she or anyone else on her team could be the replacement because of the tie. So, you know what? She's playing the game. It doesn't mean that there aren't repercussions, but she's playing the game, which means Faisal, by 3-2-1 vote, Faisal's going to be competing for elimination this particular episode. So now let's talk about the safety draw. Who drew the safety dagger? Chauncey. Chauncey drew the dagger, which is very interesting because now he has to decide whether to save Bananas or to save Nelson. Well, we'd already seen him a little bit worried that Nelson and Faisal would save each other and leaning towards Banana. So it's not a huge surprise that he does just that. He saves Banana. Think about Johnny Bananas. You're sitting there knowing that someone has a chance to send you in elimination. The fact that he didn't, he's got to feel a little surprised, maybe. In some ways, maybe it shows me that Bananas isn't regarded as quite as much of a threat as he was a long time ago. Not that long ago. He just won a championship a few seasons back. But but he saved Chauncey has saved Bananas, which means worst possible situation for Nelson and Faisal. They're gonna have to go against each other, and someone's going home. Considering Faisal did Nelson so dirty in a past season, there was a tiny little part of me wondering, is Faisal just gonna say, "Look, man, I had my chance. Now it's your time to shine, Nelson," and whether he just absolutely forfeits or he just halfway plays or whatever. Would Faisal ever consider doing something like that? No, not in a million. I don't think in a million years he would do that. Faisal basically says, "Man, I hate to do it, but it's a game. I got to win." And Nelson, if that means you go home, you go home. So they're both playing hard. It's may the best man finish this thing up. So it's going to be Faisal versus Nelson. The game itself, I think they call it spearheaded. Interesting game. Basically, they're each in a cage, a cube, a little bit bigger than they are. There's 9 spears that have been stuck through drywall or some kind of hard material on each wall of the crate, and 2 or 3 spears stuck up through the ceiling as well. The end of each of these spears is protruding into or coming into the cage itself, and there's chains through rings on these spears, and the chains are all jumbled up and wrapped around everywhere as these things tend to do. So what each of these players has to do, get into their cube. First thing they have to do is untangle all these chains, get all the chains off the spears. Once they do that, take the spears out of the walls and go put them in the stand at the final spot. And whoever can get the 9 spears into that final spot first wins the game. Now, it's not quite that easy because they kept calling it drywall in the game. It seemed like a little bit stronger than drywall because it took a lot of effort to pull these spears out. There's certainly a learning curve in terms of how do you pull backwards a spear in order to get it to break the drywall itself. It's a close competition. Really getting the chains untangled. Seems like Faisal and Nelson are pretty close to even on that. Not much differentiation between the two. But when it comes to getting the spears out, it even seems like maybe Nelson started just a little bit earlier than Faisal did, finishing up the chains. But it doesn't matter. Faisal's just a little bit, I don't know if it's a matter of strength. It's a little bit more endurance. Maybe it's just understanding that you had to turn these spears a little bit of an angle to enlarge this hole until you were able to rip it out. Whatever. I think in the end, Faisal wins it. I think he wins it basically like 9 spears. Nelson maybe had 7 spears. So he's a couple of spears behind. So it wasn't a blowout by any means, but any kind of strength competition, you don't want to go be going up against Faisal, and he's proven it again this week. Faisal survives the elimination challenge. Nelson is going on. I absolutely hate to see it. I've met Nelson. I've met Faisal, both of them incredible guys. I really enjoy talking to both of them. But I gotta say, Nelson, just the nicest guy, and I just want him to get his chance to win this thing. He's been playing for a lot of seasons. He hadn't made it yet. I hated to see either one of these two guys going home, but that's the game of the challenge, right? So Nelson has gone home. As a result, now Mariah's team has certainly gotten rid of one of the stronger elements on the other side. I absolutely believe they would prefer to get rid of Faisal. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out going forward because let's talk about this first of all. Nelson's eliminated. Now, remember all the ride or dies. As long as your ride or die is still playing in the game, you're still alive. Unfortunately for Nelson, his ride or die was Nuris, who got sent home last week. So this is the first situation where we've had both partners in a ride or die duo both be eliminated. And as expected, we see them come out and TJ talks to him and says, sorry guys, but now that both of you have been eliminated, y'all are eliminated for good. You're heading home. So we've lost Nelson. We've lost Nuris. Somewhere back there, Kenny's still hanging out, hoping that KC's going to get him back into this game. But we lost Nelson. We lost Nuris. Repercussions are going to be huge. Faisal is safe. He's going to be gunning for Devin and Jordan. Devin and Jordan know that. So we've got that grudge match set up. But along with that, we've got Tori and Jordan are going to be absolutely going after each other based on what happened this week. Forget the competitions. Just inside the house, there's going to be a lot of drama as these two go at it, I think. And with the women's elimination likely next week, will Faisal, will he stick with his ride or die Mariah? Or the fact that she burned her vote and allowed him to go into the elimination, is he going to cut all connections with her at this point and potentially go after Mariah because of what she did? I think it's a possibility. I don't think there's a lot of friendship left between these two. We'll see how it works out. Faisal versus Devin and Jordan is going to be exciting, but next week is going to be the women, so we're gonna be a week out before we start seeing that develop. But yeah, next week, Tori versus Jordan, and then Faisal potentially versus Mariah. I think those are going to be some interesting situations, interesting conversations to be had. It's a fun episode. I'm looking forward to episode 13 next week. Guys, y'all have a fantastic week. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023. Until next Wednesday, SKD 143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.